Pajo Gobind Pool mat jah Manas janam ka ehi laah Pajo Gobind Pool mat jah मानस जानम का एही लाह गुर सेवा ते भगत कमाई तब ये मानस देही पाए इस देही को सिमरै देव सो देही भज हर की सेव सो देही भज हर की सेव भजो गोबिंद फूल मत जा मानस जन्म का एही लाह.
So welcome friends to another podcast in the Holy Truth series, given as always in the name of the Supreme Lord, who once again wishes to impart the very highest truth of what many call God, life and creation to the sincere seekers of the world, especially for the modern age. That's further supported by the holy masters, perfect saints and noble mystics of Sant today. Now this high truth of the ages is the noble path of Sant, or path of the true saints, also known as the universal truth, true spirituality or true religion, that is so graciously gifted to seeking humanity by the great holy masters, perfect saints and noble mystics in every age, who are themselves the true representatives of the Supreme Lord, even today. And although little known among the masses, once encountered, a sincere truth seeker can easily recognize that this noble path, or true way, encompasses all true faiths and beliefs as the noble source of all, details of which can be found in our humble literature, spiritual centers or YouTube channel, as well as in the Holy Discourse series of ISTAuk.com. But before I begin today's session of spiritual questions and answers, I would first like to make a short introduction about who we are and what we represent here today. We are the International Spiritual Truth Association, or ISTA for short, and although now global, we originally set up in 2016 in the UK by request of the Holy Masters of the day, who derived their authority from Great Master Baba Sawan Singh Ji of the holy lineage of Sant in India, the Levant and Persia. Now our given mission is simple: to tell the full truth about true spirituality or true religion from the Supreme Lord's point of view, especially for the modern age, while also correcting the confusions of the past and even that of the present about what is the real truth. Yet this high teaching is not new. It is the age-old path of true spirituality, known today as the holy truth of Sant, which in fact has been discreetly taught throughout the ages to the most sincere seekers of the time, alongside the more familiar religious or philosophical teachings that we all know of. Indeed, Holy Masters tell us that the simple teachings of mass religion and mass philosophy are only there to elevate the masses to the position of higher truth seeking, so that they can understand and ultimately practice true spirituality or true religion. Therefore, our mission here today is simple: to impart the very highest truth of the Supreme Lord to those who wish to know, with all the love, grace and wonder that such a gift entails. Now for those who do listen and take heed, Holy Masters tell us that they are indeed the most fortunate ones of humanity. As for myself, I am a sincere devotee of the very highest truth, who has been given this life in the service of the true Lord. As such, I do not seek any recognition, praise or reward, as I only act with the authority and by request of the Supreme Lord itself and the Holy Masters of today, to simply tell the full truth of God, life and creation for the modern age. I humbly speak, therefore, as one who has been gifted with true knowledge of that high truth, and as one who lives in the Supreme Lord's will. Thus I offer my humble demonstration and knowledge to all who seek the same. Now, as a friend on this noble path to God realization, I only ask that you put aside my human form, and instead listen to and take heed of the loving message that the Supreme Lord has to offer you via this humble form, who has himself been transformed by the Holy Masters of today. Thus I represent the proof that truly anyone can rise above the given karma role, to become truly noble once again by the true Lord's grace, if only they earnestly seek it. Therefore, everything I shall share with you today is a gift of wisdom direct from the true Lord itself, for the sincere seekers of high spiritual truth. In this way, I am a humble servant and perfect friend, whom the true Lord has gifted with direct knowledge of the holy truth, which I have been asked to share with you. So although I shall speak with the authority of one who has been instructed to do so by the Supreme Lord, please do not attempt to praise or glorify this humble servant in any way. For you too are all divine beings undergoing a human experience in this lifetime, though you may not yet be aware of this. Therefore, what is given to me freely by the highest authority, I give to you the same. In return, I only ask that you open your heart and mind to the holy truth that the Supreme Lord has to offer you. Now, for those who need further assistance, they may privately contact the main speaker directly via email or video by first subscribing to our valuable information service at ISTAuk.com and then requesting the direct contact details of our main speaker from our administrators. He will endeavour to answer all spiritual queries within 48 hours of receipt, but please be patient if he should take a little longer due to his busy schedule and sheer number of inquiries. So thank you. Let's now begin with the general question and answer session from our spiritual truth inquiries as well as the audience.
Thank you. Right, the first question refers to something that you mentioned in one of your podcasts. So here goes. So I'm going to mention the passage and then I'll ask the question. In a previous answer about spiritual revelations, the main speaker said this: the angel Gabriel came to him, meaning Prophet Muhammad, and started revealing the truths of the astral realm from the moon god Allah, the first level of God's authority that Prophet Muhammad encountered and where the elements of the Quran were revealed to him. Does it then happen like this, that if anyone tries on his own, no matter what method or route one opts for to find the spiritual truth, that an angel or a deity of the astral realm would show the path and eventually reveal the astral realm to them, if they are sincere enough? Or does the inquirer go directly into the astral realm and meet the angels or deities there?
Okay, long question.
I know.
You see, it's not that straightforward. It's not that every inquirer of spiritual truth will encounter an angel from the astral realm who will reveal the secrets them of the deities there. It's those who are chosen, marked in history to create a new philosophy or to advance a current philosophy. So Prophet Muhammad was one of those. There are many people who were doing what he was doing, but he was chosen to impart that knowledge to the peoples of the time. So it's not that anyone can do this, but certainly anyone who inquires about the truth within will encounter some measure of that truth. Whether they then later become a teacher and start giving revelations to the public, or whether it's something privately given to them for their own spiritual progress, which in most cases that is the case. So yes, anybody from any position can start spiritual practice, inquire about the truth. All they have to do is become a truth seeker. Once they become a truth seeker, everything else falls into place. And when I mean a truth seeker, I'm talking about the highest truth. Not say scientific truth or philosophical truth or even religious truth. I'm talking about the very highest truth that transcends them all. When somebody is really seeking sincerely, earnestly and yearning within their heart for the truth, then the Lord can appear to them in many ways, or give them instruction in many ways, or even put them into the company of the saints or the holy ones to help them along the way. So definitely that is possible. But whether you become a new prophet or that is not really something that is destined for everyone. Only certain marked individuals historically are given that role.
So when you mention about like earnest seekers of the truth, do you mean like if someone was to say, I want to know why I'm here, what is it all about, what's, that
it has to become a need. There's a difference between being a curiosity seeker, let's just check this out, and it actually needing to know. When it becomes a need, we call this person earnest, because their very life depends upon this. They have to find the truth, or else they're even prepared to, even the extreme case, die for it. They're prepared to seek. The history of the saints, they reached a point where they had such a burning desire to want to know the truth that they were prepared to die. And some did, who were unrecorded in history, and most didn't. Like King Ashoka in India. He was seeking the truth. He was a Buddhist, but he wanted to reach the enlightenment of the Buddha. And he'd done so many atrocities in the past, but he totally converted to Buddhism and started promoting Buddhism. In fact, he's considered the father of the promotion of Buddhism from India to the East and so on around the world. However, one interesting thing that a lot of people didn't know is the manner of his death. Because he decided that having created all these stupas, these kind of like monuments to the Buddha and opened up temples here and there and spread the word, he wanted to have that revelation himself. He wanted to see it for himself, rather than just say, here was the scripture, let me go and promote it because it sounds good and it helped me to save my life from the cruelty that I was doing before. So he decided that he wanted to bargain with the Buddha. And he said, okay, I'm going to sit here and meditate for however long it takes. Either I will die because I'm not going to eat or drink, or you'll give me revelation and I'll be able to help others further. And then sadly for him, he died in that process. He's one of the few who did. Whereas other spiritual leaders or other people, actually it was the other way around. They became enlightened. So the only reason that he had to die, because of the atrocities, the murders and the killings he did in warring in India, that he caused so many atrocities and tortures that he had to pay the price. So he was an unusual case. But most people who really seek the truth, to that point, they will always get revelation. They will always be saved. And we call these people earnest. Obviously, I don't suggest in the modern day that we literally do that. There are very few people who are at that level of devotion that it matters so much that they're prepared to die for it, although that's the ultimate. But just really needing it, making it a need above all else, means that you become earnest. And a person who has that good fortune within them, that it becomes a need, then these ones are always blessed with inner revelation and spirituality and progress well on the path.
Thank you. Next question. We have been seeing the use of physical musical instruments in some spiritual traditions and in some lineages of saints for singing devotional songs, while other traditions and some other lineages of saints do not use it. For example, in RSSB lineage, physical musical instruments are not used, only the voice. Is there any reason behind this difference?
You see, there are many traditions on spiritual practice, many levels of spiritual practice. So from a religious point of view, let's say, instrumentation was used to create a mood, so that when people were sitting, they would feel kind of in a spiritual mode. So having a catchy tune like an arti or a shabad or something like that would create the mood for people to focus on what is to come. From a higher perspective, let's say from a purely Sant point of view, then musical instruments can be a distraction, because somebody can get into the music and like the lyrics and sing, but not really engage in that spirituality, because the music can distract the mind into rhythm thinking, into pattern thinking. And what happens in pattern thinking is you just go over the same thing over again and you play the tune in your mind, and you may not even listen to what the speaker is saying or what the person is saying. So Sant has opted out of that, and they use just a voice. So whilst they're singing the shabads, which are praises to the Lord and so on from the past saints, they only use the voice. And the voice itself is very haunting if done well. And originally, for example, from the Guru Granth Sahib, which is the most famous book of shabads, it was arranged in something called rags, which have a special way of being sung to create that effect within the individual. So it's not just a question of music and singing, it was the way it's supposed to be done. These days, it's not like that. Very few know how to sing it as it was back in the day to create that kind of hypnotic effect. Now it's sung in the form of information, similarly to the music, where it's prepared. So RSSB used which is Radhaswami Satsang Vyas, the biggest lineage of Sant Mat currently today. They use just a voice to create that mood for the audience before they enter into the shabad, to quieten them down. And there is something about the voice, if it's sung inappropriately, that really does create a haunting effect on the mind. So that's what they choose to do. So there is a reason behind it, and that's why.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions reference to Ishwar Puriji. The first one is, Ishwar Puriji once spoke of the grand nothing as the source. Could you elaborate what this means?
Yeah, I mean, from the point of view of Sant Mat, everything originates from nothing. Actually, that's the line of Buddhism as well. Only nothing can produce every possibility. If you have nothing to start with, meaning no framework, no rules, no kind of a structure, then anything is possible. The moment you create something, you have limitation, you have rules. So the absolute origin that Ishwarji was talking about, that grand nothing, which is, he was referring to the Anami Purush, where no soul even exists, only the Lord of the fifth realm, the top of the fifth realm, Anami Purush itself. So when a soul merges into Anami Purush, he becomes the Lord. He becomes everything. Yeah, it's not that he loses his minuscule drop. He becomes the ocean. Who would not want to become the ocean from a drop? So this, because there's nothing there apart from this absoluteness of isness and wonder and joy and bliss, we say this is nothing, because there's no creation, there's no structure to that level of consciousness. So that's what Ishwarji was referring to.
Thank you. Ishwar Puriji once said, worry is praying for failure. What did he mean? Can worry really cause us to suffer unnecessarily?
If somebody has the capacity to worry, they have a capacity to become negative. Not everybody worries or dwells in worry. Some people, if it comes momentarily to the mind, they dismiss it. Others say, no, I have to hold on to this. It's coming to me. I have to worry and dwell to the ultimate suffering end. So what ISTAuk is referring to that if somebody engages in the habit of worry, this usually means that they have a negativity surrounding them and therefore they attract negative consequences. It's not that they are in charge of this. It's that actually it's their habit, and their habit has a consequence. But it doesn't mean that they can create a problem by worrying, because everything is written, everything is scripted. We know that the script is written, then we take birth to fulfill it. Because as a character in a great play, we have to play our part. We can't go outside the part. Imagine a big movie, and the actor decides, oh, to hell with the script, I'm going to go off that way instead. Although the script says that way. It can't be done. The film would not be complete, would not be right. So this great play that we're playing in, as unknown actors, means that a script has to be written. Now for some, you'll have the nobility there. They become noble saints. Others become noble villains. Others are just the middleman in between. And they're all performing their individual roles to make the play complete. Because you need every single part to be played. Even in a movie, you need the extras to play the parts. You need even the scenery. Everything has to be played. In this great play, everybody plays a part. The difference is that every single person is a hero of their own story. Because if they decide to become a truth seeker and rise above the character they're playing, they become the ultimate truth. Then they become a hero, even if they're just playing a humble beggar in this life. So spirituality is saying, become the hero of your own story, and conquer the limitations of the mind. So from that point of view, then that person doesn't worry. They're on a mission. When you're on a mission for success, you become positive because you have a positive success to go towards. You're now migrating from darkness to light, and that is always exciting. So generally, a true spiritual practitioner or seeker becomes excited, and they don't really worry so much. And if worry does momentarily through habit come into their mind, it's dismissed quickly because they're so preoccupied. I haven't got time for that. I've got to move to get onto this thing. So worry is praying for failure, because a person who habitually worries is likely to encounter negative experiences, and therefore they could say they fail in their mission to become happy in some event.
Thank you. Right, going on to the mind. You've got a question about the mind. I was wondering, sometimes my mind very easily remembers some random old melody or song or a musical note and starts humming or singing within. The song or music is so vivid and clear, as if it was playing from a music player. I have to make an effort to stop that and start repetition of the holy mantra, but which the mind cannot easily continue as it loses interest in the mantra. Is it because the holy mantra doesn't have a melody or music attached to it?
You see, this doesn't affect everybody. It depends on the state of the mind. Some people have a very musical mind, have a very rhythmic mind, and therefore they like to remember songs and rhythms, and you'll tend to find that they're humming to themselves or singing. That kind of person is constantly regurgitating old melodies and things, and just keeping the mind occupied. It's a part of the mind that is habitual in some individuals, but not everybody. For those individuals, they can actually do the mantra as a rhyme. They can actually say it in a rhyme form. So then it becomes interesting to them. But the other thing is to do it very slowly and deliberately, so that each syllable becomes aware to them. They're registering each syllable in their mind. And you'll find this is a fantastic way of not being distracted during the meditation process. Because when you're that focused on making each syllabus meaningful, you'll find that actually your mind doesn't wander. But if you momentarily leave that habit and you start going into mundanity, where you're just reciting it without any real feeling, then what happens is, of course, the mind will do other things as well, because the nature of the mind is to multitask. It wants to have lots of excitements in every possibility. So it may drift off somewhere momentarily, then you come back to the mantra, and so on. So the idea is to make the mantra really significant to the point that no other melody can come in the way. And if that still fails, then sing it in your mind. Make it a rhyme, no harm. But you have to focus on every syllable, even when you're singing it.
Thank you. Right, I've got a few questions around meditation. What factors lead to not opening the 10th inner door, i.e. the third eye, in meditation? And how long must I meditate before the 10th door, third eye, will open?
It's not so straightforward because, you see, none of that is in your hands. Your job as a practitioner is to get to the door, to the third eye. And just to elaborate on what they mean by the 10th door, in Sant we understand that we have 9 doors which open outwards into the world through the senses and through the portals of the body, the mouth, the ears, the nostrils, the 2 lower apertures, and so on. And these are pushing things out into the world and communicating with the outside world. But then there's one door, the 10th door, which leads inwards, and we call that the third eye. So the third eye and the 10th door are one and the same. In Sikhism, they call it Daswandwar, the 10th door. And that's where this person is getting that from. Just to clarify for those who are listening who may not understand what I mean by 10th door and third eye, it's the same thing. Now, your job as a practitioner is to get to the door. That's it. Your responsibility finishes there. And you knock at the door. What do we mean by knocking at the door? By constantly reciting the holy mantra, and by constantly looking towards the darkness of the door, which you cannot see even, just sitting there in faith and devotion, with love and devotion, then eventually the door will be open to you. Now, it can only be open to those who are ready. And what do we mean by that? You see, in the modern world in particular, it's much more difficult than it was in the past. Because back in the day, people lived in very big extended families. So even a family person with young children and lots of responsibility could have that tended out to somebody else while they're in meditation. So they didn't have to worry about, I have to worry about my little Johnny, my little Alice, and I have to worry about getting to work on time, and I have to, meet this deadline, I have to reply to this email. And they didn't have any of that in the past. So it's very easy for them to say to the family, please, I'm going to go for meditation. Can you look after their children and their everything? And I can just withdraw. And that's what they did. So nowadays, it's more difficult because of the outside distractions, I say. So your job is just to get to the 10th door and become a true and earnest, as I say, earnest again here, earnest seeker. Now, when somebody's in that position where it matters to them, it really matters to them more than their own life to the point, that door will open. So they say when and how long to meditate. It's not how long or when, it is when you're ready. When you become that level of devotee that really wants this, really, really needs this actually, then the door is open to you, because then you're in a position also in life, because usually a person who's reached that point in life has prepared their life for spirituality. So when spirituality is the center of their world and everything else surrounds it, they've already kind of remotely detached from things. Like they just go along with looking after the family, go along with the work, but they're not fully engaged in it. They're just doing their duty, and they get excited when it comes to becoming a hero of their own play, to discover the truth for themselves. When that happens in those individuals, yes, then anything is possible.
You mentioned about reciting the mantra. Where would they get the mantra from?
For a person who's an initiate, this person is an initiate from their questioning. But if they're not initiated, then they could just use any recitation. Anything that conveys that kind of spirituality, that height of spirituality in their mind. In the beginning is not important because they're just getting to the door. So what will happen to them before the door is opened? They will become into the company of a perfect saint or an enlightened one who will shed light upon them, and eventually they get initiated to the point where they can use the holy mantra and enter the 10th door. The other way to go in, using say a normal mantra, you can still access the astral realm, only the astral realm, by your own sheer effort, because in the past you've done lots and lots of practice in many lifetimes. So when such an individual now recites the mantra of any religion, let's say, they can actually go within. They can cross the 10th door. But then what? They don't know what to do there because they don't have a master to guide them. So there's nobody going to appear in front of them. They're going to be subject to all kinds of malevolent, mischievous, friendly, unfriendly spirits coming to them, vying for them. Wow, a new guinea pig here. Let's play with this one. And the astral realm is very playful. So it could be negatively playful depending upon your samskars, your impressions in the mind. If you're quite a negative individual, then you'll be misled, you know. Others will just, like angel, will come and greet you and they'll have fun with you and they'll leave you here and there wandering around, but there's no objective to it. Because in the astral realm, the objective is to head to the capital of that realm. And that's called Sahasdal Kanwal. That's the actual capital. And that's the route by which you can go to the next realm, the causal realm. Everywhere else is just a wonder like this world. You could just wander around anywhere in this world, traveling around, enjoying yourself. But you don't get anywhere. You don't achieve anything at the end of it. You just say, I had a good time. And that's what the astral realm is all about, having a good time. So that's why the heavens are located there, but so are the hells. You know, and for some even going to hell is a good time. You know, if they're bored with heaven. Hell is not always what it seems, but that's another story. So yeah, it's not in your hands going within, but an earnest, sincere seeker, definitely the Lord will open the door for them because their life will be such already set up that they can easily do this without losing interest in their family, their friends, their work. You know.
Thank you. Has anybody ever died during the practice of Shurachap yoga? I ask because when we start listening to the sound current, various thoughts start coming, like, I don't want to do it, you will be dead. So how do I overcome that fear?
Well, truthfully, when you cross the third eye, you actually die. But this is a controlled death, because the death that occurs through spiritual practice, and by the way, nobody has actually physically died, because this death is a little different. This is a practice, a rehearsal death. And a rehearsal means you can go back home afterwards. Yeah, it's not the end, not the ultimate. So there's a cord that connects you to the body, a silver cord, which allows you to have a spiritual connection with the body. So when you travel within, so nobody ever dies. But crossing the boundary between physical and spiritual definitely gives you a feeling of death. Now, this is why it is so important to have a living master as your guide. Because what will happen at this point is the master appears to reassure you, come with me. Now, when you're engaged or focused on the master, you forget that you've crossed from the physical to the spiritual, and you can enjoy the wonders in the company of the master. So one particular reason why you need a master to make this journey as safely as possible, unless, for some people like the yogis, you know, the ardent yogis, they have many, many lifetimes practiced it. They've been through the fear. They've overcome the fear. So now when they meditate, even without a master, they reach the astral realm and they see all the wonders there and they don't have any fear. Because built inside them is their lack of fear. They just know it's going to be okay. But for somebody who's not gone that line and has become a satsangi of a perfect living master, yes, for them it can be fearful because it is a death-like experience. But if they keep on practicing and they have that love and devotion and faith that the master will greet them on the other side, that's what happens. Master greets them. So then this fear never is realized. It's just imaginary and never comes to anything.
Thank you. When I meditate, I have rare instances of seeing the master very clearly. When this occurs, it happens randomly without me doing anything about it. On other occasions, I cannot visualize him, but my mind keeps trying and the image is often hazy. There is something in me that enjoys whatever comes, and I like being in that meditation chamber, but my mind keeps struggling to visualize him. How can I separate myself from this struggle and just enjoy being there?
I think the last part answers it. Separate yourself from the struggle and just enjoy the experience. A lot of the time, when we start meditating and we're on the verge of being this devotional, earnest, sincere practitioner, Master will send you glimpses, will afford you glimpses ahead of time. Not that they've been earned, because once you've earned something, it cannot be taken away in sadhana. But you can be given previews and glimpses. So what this person is talking about is a common phenomena of encouraging somebody to keep on practicing, because they're getting there. They're getting to the point now where that devotion is strong enough to warrant a vision of the Master appearing before them, randomly, as this person says, meaning it's not in their hands, because it's not in their hands at all. This indicates that randomness and not occurring constantly indicates that it is a privilege afforded to that person as reward for their earnest seeking, rather than something they've actually attained. Because once you attain the vision within, it's never lost. It cannot be taken away. Yeah, no matter what. So these are glimpses afforded. So this person should just carry on increasing their love and devotion, becoming more earnest and more yearning in their practice. And you know what? It starts becoming more and more regular, and eventually becomes consistent, that every time they sit in meditation, they go within, Master appears, and they go on their merry journey. So it's very good. This indicates that this disciple, even having a temporary experience like that, is certainly on the right road. They're certainly doing well. But if they want more, they have to step up the game. That's all it is.
Thank you. Right, I've got two other questions regarding meditation, and they're from the same person, so you might see links in between them.
Okay.
So here goes. I never hear the glorified, sweet, melodious bell sound inside. Instead, what has opened up for me so far was a strong vibration, a resonance that is overpowering and pulling. But the mind still creates doubt about the sound that I am hearing. Although it is a pulling and a powerful vibration, it is not the sweet melodious sound described by the saints or what is written in the texts. Should I simply ignore this vibration sound and move forward, or should I simply dwell upon the sound I hear?
You see, firstly, any sound that comes from within, that's not external, it's good, to start with. Because it gives us a point of focus. It engages another faculty of the mind with the hearing. You see, in the astral realm, the two dominant senses are seeing and hearing. Both those have to be occupied in order for the process of absorption in this practice to be complete. So we have many practice sounds that we see in the astral realm, over 3,000 of them. And they can come in all forms, depending on the person's past practice. And obviously this practitioner has practiced historically, maybe their second time on the path. So now they're encountering an inner sound. And the sound has some measure of a pull, and pleasantly. They describe it as being pleasant and so on, which is a good thing. The thing is that when you're listening to the sound, it's important to keep the focus in the center. So don't follow the sound. The sound will come to you in the center if it's the real sound. If you start following this person doesn't mention whether the sound is coming from the top, bottom, left or right, because it can come from any of those positions. If the sound is coming from the center, you can focus on that sound. Because that sound is leading you to the great sound, the bell sound, which pulls the soul rather than the mind. So the bell sound is something very, very different, and it's the particular sound that pulls the soul up through the illusory realms and leads them to their own soul experience. All other sounds are sounds of those realms, and whilst they can have different measures of attraction, they don't have that ultimate sweetness, melodiousness and pull that the great bell sound has. Because a great bell sound is your soul calling to you. That's why it pulls you. And this is a very powerful thing, because you're being pulled to your own source. So nothing compares to this sound. Other sounds can be entertaining, they can have a measure of pull, a measure of attraction, but they don't elevate you spiritually. They're just there, let's say, for entertainment, and for spiritual practitioners as a kind of practice that there is a sound that occurs within, and the mind can engage. So for this practitioner, they should keep their focus in the center, and yes, listen to the sound if it's coming from the center. If it's coming not from the center, they can be aware of it, but keep to the center. Keep doing the Simran. Eventually though, if the sound becomes louder and more powerful and more pulling, they stop the Simran. And they must then start listening to the sound fully focused. Particularly if it's in the center and powerful, and they sit in the sound position called the bhajan position. So you change the position where you block your ears, your eyes with the hands, which will be shown to them at the time of meditation. And that way you could become focused on the sound, because ultimately it's the sound that takes you home, not seeing anything. Visions along the way are just entertainment. The sound is the one that pulls you back, this vibrational sound, this resonant sound that they're talking about. And this sound has particular forms when you're going through the different regions. And the first really important one is the great bell sound, because that pulls you to your own source. So yeah, I mean, all these sounds give you a kind of an atmosphere, but the great bell sound takes you home. It's only sound. So this is why listening to the sound takes precedent over seeing. And that's why I get many questions by email on this point. Why is it that when we are meditating and going within and we're seeing all this wonderful scenery, and we're told then to start focusing on the sound and give up the looking, the wonder of this scenery, and they get confused why? Because in this world we operate predominantly by seeing. We look at everything and we judge everything by seeing predominantly. All the other senses are second. In the spiritual world, it's different. The hearing is dominant and the seeing is not. The seeing accompanies the hearing. So seeing is always secondary, because seeing is entertainment, hearing is pulling. Nobody's ever pulled by seeing. Nobody gets pulled by seeing. They get entertained, but they don't get pulled. Sound is very haunting. Like even now, if you listen to an ordinary piece of music that really affects you, it really affects your mood much more than just seeing. Music has a unique power to pull you in a certain way. And that's because that is actually what happens within. So the sound in meditation is everything. Seeing is not necessary, but it's useful.
You mentioned about getting in the bhajan position.
Yeah.
But if you do that, won't you disturb the meditation?
No, because the way you do it is very subtle.
Okay.
You learn the art, practicing. It really is a question of leaning over, then blocking your hands, blocking your ears with your thumbs and putting the hands over the eyes and assuming that position. It should be a very easy thing to transform, And remember, the sound will not just go away. If it's a pulling sound or powerful sound, there's no way, because you can even hear it when you're working and while during the day. For those people who've become realized, the sound is constant. The sound of their calling their soul, the sound calling them from their soul, is constantly playing in the background all the time. It doesn't diminish. It's always there. So when that person sits momentarily quietly on their own, they're withdrawn. It's not that they even have to practice to withdraw. They naturally withdrawn because the sound pulls them upwards. When they're engaged in the world and the mind is engaged with the five senses, that kind of puts the sound in the background, but it never goes.
Okay, thank you. Right, this is the same person. Another question from them. There are rare moments when I simply sink into that sound and it gives a feeling of riding a spaceship, and it seems everything is melting away and it gives immense peace and joy. But the mind doesn't let me ride the sound. It keeps repeating the Holy Simran and doesn't let the whole attention go on the sound. My mind feels a sense of security in repeating the Holy Simran and doesn't let the attention go into the adventurous unknown of riding the sound current. There are instances when I feel as if I was choking while riding the sound. I feel I am stuck in this transition to sound for a few years now. Please guide me as to how I can move forward.
Yeah, as explained earlier, they need to assume the bhajan position and stop doing the Simran. With practice, this becomes perfected. Like with anything else, the mind is not used to this type of activity inwardly. The mind wants to express itself outwardly. So the mind firstly will reject anything initially that you hear within as fantasy or imagination or something or another. So that's the first hurdle to overcome. And by constantly being sincere, again, the sincerity of practice, it becomes a need, then this is easily overcome because the mind becomes your friend. And that's a subject for another time, how to make the mind your friend and to help you on this journey, which is possible. So in this case, this person has to make sure they assume the bhajan position. A lot of people, when they listen to the sound, like you say, they're sitting in the lotus position or in a chair or something, and they get absorbed in it and they forget to change the position. The reason why the bhajan position is so useful, because it really does get you to focus on the sound, and it overrides the seeing part. So it's really important they assume the bhajan position, and it's just a question of practice. Now also, when the sound is not the real sound, it doesn't have a powerful enough pull to stop you doing the simran. Because believe me, when you hear, let's say, the big bell sound, there is no way you can do anything else. It's calling to you. It's like if somebody suddenly calls your name really loudly. No matter what you're doing, you stop and turn. That, multiply that by 1,000 times. And that is the pull of the soul calling to you. There's no question of you being able to do anything else at that time. Yeah. So when you reach that point, that pull becomes so powerful. You ride that current. And this person talks about spaceship and sensations. These are all because this is part of the early stage of the mind. The mind is on a journey itself, also going back to its plane. So it has its own interpretations. So it visualizes. The mind likes to visualize. So it'll visualize itself on the spaceship and imagine this and imagine that. This is all just imagination. They don't have to worry about it. No harm. The mind is just doing its thing. But if this person wants to move forward, as they say, from this position, they really need to focus on the making sure they assume the bhajan position, the sound position, earnestly, and become earnest devotee in their heart and ask the master for help. And slowly, slowly, it will come to them at the appropriate time. Because again, if they did catch the big bell sound and they're pulled to that melodious sound, they will immediately abandon this world. When they come to this world, everything is fake. Everything is just nonsense. But they have to take part in the illusion world, in the nonsense world. And it's very difficult for those who are previously very engaged in their world. They really take it seriously. There is my husband, there is my child, there is my work, these are my friends, and they mean the world to me. Yeah? Well, if they do mean the world to them, finish that job. Carry on with that until they no longer mean the world to you. Usually because in one way or another, you've grown out of it, you've got bored and also they let you down, mostly. It's a very good way. That's why there's a lot of cases where with satsangis, their children let them down more than average, than non-satsangi. And people say, why is this the case? We're in this spiritual home. Why is our children letting us down? Why is our wife letting us down? Because these are attachments you shouldn't be having. You can love that person without being attached. And that's another subject, how to love without attachment. Attachment is possessive and it's selfish. Love or unconditional love without attachment means that you genuinely care for that person more than yourself. You're not satisfying your need, you're satisfying them. Yeah? And whatever path takes them, whatever life takes them, you support them. You advise them and help them if you are wiser than them and know they may be going into trouble, but you don't control them. Yeah? And you don't possess them and own them. Therefore, you do not get angry. So anger is the first thing to be eliminated on the spiritual path. If you hold anger inside you or that irritability, you're still far away from that ideal state for a spiritual practitioner. Yes, you have a question.
You mentioned a few times that you said that the soul is calling you.
Yes.
Is that the same as the master calling you?
You could say they're one and the same. Because ultimately you'll merge with the master and become the soul master complex. But the master is nothing more than the means by which you get attached to your own truth. You are the soul and you are the super soul. Ultimately, you're everything. Yeah, there's nothing but you in creation. So the real mystery is when you withdraw your attention within and you're attached to the drop of the ocean, and the drop has the same power and quality as the ocean itself. It's exactly the same in composition, but it's a small version of it, a drop. But still it has all the essence and the power and the glory of the ocean within it. That calls you to itself, because the process is the soul calling you back to its source with the aid of the master. So the master gets you to listen to the shabad, the sound within, which has come from the soul, and the master accompanies you on this journey initially, because there are certain stages of consciousness that you must pass through, and they're very difficult to do that safely without the presence of a perfect master.
And the soul is doing that from where? Satgurus.
Ultimately, yes. The first level of connection with the soul is from Parbrahm, where there's pure soul. So the soul is there unencumbered. It has no mind, it has no restriction. So that when you become self-realized before God realization, you're actually attracting to Parbrahm, the soul, which is free in the purely spiritual realm without mind or without illusion. So that is where the initial shabad, the big bell sound, attracts you. Once you get to that point, then other sounds take over that take you higher up.
So you're saying that it's the soul that is sending the master.
Ultimately,
there is no master.
Yes, everything is you, ultimately. But the fun is you discovering that. When you divide yourself up into the many from the one, and you each play the parts, and each one is isolated from this knowledge, you think that these are all different individuals around you, and you think that the creation is separate from you. But the reality is it isn't. Everything is part of you. Now the fun thing is, you, being this individual, drop, discovering that you are actually the ocean. And as the ocean, you separate yourself into countless drops to experience creation, to experience fun, for an adventure here. And every part has to be played. Whether you're playing a mundane role now, and you think, why am I so special? I'm just living here in England in this minuscule role. But no, you're everything and everyone. You're also the king. You're also everything. But you don't know that. So you start off as the humble beggar, because you are trying to become the hero of your own play. Now, how much better it is for somebody to become a hero who's a beggar, yeah, than somebody who's already a king. Yeah, it's much more fun to go from the level of a beggar to the hero than it is for a king to become a hero. So the mystery of your particular chosen forms and your journey from those forms to the ultimate is this. It's beyond the ken of the mind. It's beyond the understanding of human thinking, because the way we are taught here about the function of the mind is very limited. The mind is infinite itself. It can create any illusion and fantasy it likes for its own entertainment. So, it's only those who become realized that from the very ordinary, the most lowest member of society, they become a great saint or a great perfect enlightened one. How is that possible? It is. In fact, it is more possible for them than it is for the king to do so, because the king feels satisfied with his lot. He said, I'm a king of all this land. Why do I need to seek anything more? I'm going to enjoy this. But for a beggar who's suffering and thinks he's nothing, even the king tramples upon him. He can outrank the king in the end. He can reach a state beyond the level of the king that the king can only fantasize about. Now that is a real miracle, and it's the saints who perform these miracles by converting ordinary individuals who think they're nothing. And he tells them, no, you can become the hero of your own story. You have it within you. Don't limit yourself by the society you live in, who point a label and say you're nothing, you're this, you're that, for whatever reason. No, overcoming this limitation and becoming great again is the wonder of spirituality. That is why it is such a fun thing to do for those who understand this.
So you're saying that the whole of creation is you?
Yes. There is only one, the creator. If the creator has created everything, what else is there but the creator? If there's one ocean, and all the drops come from the ocean. What can a drop say to the ocean?
So all the deities and everything that you see on it,
Everything
is you.
In order to play the part, you have to create all the roles. For example, a writer for a play, a film, a movie, when he writes the script, he doesn't just write about the hero and ignore the rest. He includes everybody. He is the director of the play. He makes sure that every part is being played well, according to the script. So you have a script, and then you have the characters created to play the part. He chooses the characters to play, he gives them the lines, he gives them the script, everything is determined, even the scenery. And then the character plays their part individually. And the coming together of all these people makes a story, makes a drama. It is fun. But at the end of it, the difference is, at the end of this play, they all pack up and go home.
So what's triggering the soul at that level to say, enough's enough, let's call it a day with this experience?
The timeline they have here for a certain time. Every soul that has entered into the illusion of creation has separated themselves from the source. A drop that has separated itself from the ocean has a time in which it encounters the adventure and will go back home. That is the promise made at the time when it separated itself from the ocean. Each drop was promised that at a certain time they will be called back home. And it's got nothing to do with what they're doing here. That time will come. People can be in the middle of the biggest projects going on in the world, and suddenly something hits them and they have to investigate. Others are more gentle, slowly, they're making this inquiry, they have some feeling inside, they don't even know where that feeling is coming from. Why am I making this inquiry? Why am I interested in spirituality even? Why aren't I out there chasing this and that like everybody else? There's something else in them. They're still chasing the world because they're not detached yet, but they've got this other thing inside them which separates them from others, and it turns them into a seeker. And then when they become a seeker, they can realize the completeness of this. They can start their journey to become a hero of their own play.
If the soul's doing everything, then who's doing the marking?
The soul. Everything is done in the script. The script writer writes all the parts, doesn't he? When you write a script, every part is played.
So the soul's marking itself.
Yes, they call this a leela, a sport of the divine, of which you are the originator. But you've separated yourself from the origin to make yourself seem like just a player. How fun is that? The player then becomes the originator. And that's the point of spirituality. Then what happens is, let's say you manage to do this in this lifetime. You become even partly realized. Then you play this part really fun. You don't care. You talk about worry being eliminated, concerns being eliminated, future planning. You just go with the flow. Because you think, well, at the end of the day, I'm now on a journey to discover my truth. It's a matter of time. So let time run its course. In the meantime, I'm going to give up all my botherations and my concern and just have fun. Whatever comes my way, make the most of it. If it doesn't come my way, don't search for it, right? And just enjoy. Then it becomes fun. This is not a part of misery. This is not a part of losing out or giving up. You're adding another dimension to your life, which is fun, joy. Yeah. So instead of just looking after your family and running this mundane existence with all the stresses and worry, you now suddenly having fun, doing all the same things, but in a fun mode. How much better is that? And that's just the beginning, having fun. Because as you progress and you realize the whole scheme of the wonder of it, you become so awestruck. Wow, all of this magnificence is there for my entertainment. You become the center of the world, which you are. Everything now revolves around you. Yeah, even so, everybody else is playing the part. They're all you at different stages of the evolution. Some of them may not be realized. But you don't tell everybody, hey, the world's revolving around you. But inside you feel the world revolves around you. And everybody else is just part of your play. Because you become the hero of your own story. And that's the real adventure that's going on here. And each and every version of you has to discover this for itself. The wonder of it all. Because you're an infinite being, you have to create infinite stories. How can an infinite being be entertained infinitely if it doesn't create an infinite story?
So I'm also creating all these monsters that are like the master that initiates you, I understand.
It's part of you. It's a higher part of you. We're talking about levels of consciousness here. So let's say the higher consciousness of you calls to you and says, come with me. Why do you connect with a holy master? Why should you listen to this man or this woman? The pull you get is because it's yourself. It's not a stranger. If it was a stranger, you'd say, oh, I'm not sure about this. But the pull you get is because there's a recognition from soul to soul that this is the soul and this is the super soul. So we call the master the super soul because it comes from a high level of consciousness. You are a part of that consciousness, but at a lower level of vibration. So therefore your realization state is much lower. You're naturally attracted to the higher state because that is the nature of the soul, to go back home when the time is right. You'll naturally feel a pull towards that individual and to the path, and will do this of your own accord. Nobody has to convince you. This is why spirituality is not something that can be taught directly or preached to. It's something that occurs within the individual, and then you have the support network come into play. The Lord creates all the support you need, like other followers on the path to support you. The Holy Master comes to initiate you. And he says, welcome friend, back, finally you're going home. So the Master then puts you on a path, and then he leaves. He's often not part of your physical life, but he appears within.
Last one, is there a reason why the soul picks that particular form and that master?
Why the soul? Well, the soul plays all the parts.
When the soul
but the master that you choose is your super soul version, which is the same for every soul who's in the creation at the same time. Now, the physical manifestation of the master depends on the era you're born into. When we talk about the master, what we're saying, they say in the Guru Granth Sahib, the Guru is Shabad, Shabad is the Guru, or the master. The real master is the sound, is the resonance that can manifest in any form. So from the higher point of view, there's no particular form of master. But when it manifests in your lifetime in a physical way, then that's the form that is akin to you. That is the one who you're going to be attracted to and follow in that lifetime. But the form of the master, made of clay and dust just like you, will perish just like you. Yeah, there's no reality to the form of the master. But what they carry within them is that the Shabad has become realized in this individual. And when the Shabad is realized within them, they can then give that realization to others. And when your time is up, that connection between your super soul, meaning the master, and you bond. And then you say, this is my master, and I love my master with love and devotion. This is all orchestrated. It's not random. It's all part of the process. And all of this should be done with fun. All of this should be done with a level of confidence and jollity. And because as your intuition increases, even before you see anything within, you get a feeling of confidence within actually. You trust that person as being the master, or you trust the enlightened one. Whatever part they've been given to play physically, you don't care what they look like or what part they're playing physically, but there's a bond, a spiritual bond. And that is something you can't deny. The mind initially is the protagonist, is the opposition. The fun of this game is, if you didn't have an opposition, it would be too easy. All you do is introduce something to spirituality and they just shoot off home all in one go. That's not much fun, really. It's how that the mind, has to be overcome and won over. So the mind is a tool that you use to create deception within you, to create illusion within you. Now, the mind itself has to become realized, which we use through, say, satsangs like this, information, listening, practice meditation. All these things are for the mind. To convince the mind that spirituality offers more than the world. Once the mind is getting more pleasure from spirituality, it abandons the world and it becomes your friend. We call this higher spiritual mind. And it's a wonder when somebody's engaged in the higher spiritual mind, even if they don't see or hear anything within, they just enjoy. And if you say to them, how come you're so happy? They say, I don't know. They actually really don't know. They just have this level of happiness within them and confidence within them. And let's say belief within them, trust and faith. And they don't know why. But then when they start seeing and hearing for themselves, it becomes apparent why. It's a journey. It's a fun. Okay? Yes, next question.
Okay, the next question is about seva.
Yes.
Is seva that is carried out at Haynes Park more important than seva done elsewhere? For example, helping others in the community or feeding the homeless. I often hear satsangists say that the only seva that is valuable is seva at Haynes Park, as it is Babaji seva. I find this to be quite upsetting, as we are all one.
The inquirer is perfectly right. Seva means selfless service. Okay? Selfless service. It doesn't mean selfless service to a particular individual or an organization. It means selfless service. So let's say you selflessly serve the community or the society at large or even the world. Then that is seva. The difference between spiritual seva and non-spiritual seva is that spiritual seva is done in the name of the Lord. In other words, you're offering your services to the Lord in recognition and thanks for what the Lord has gifted to you. So for satsangis who have been initiated by a perfect living master, they perform seva, they should perform seva with the attitude of gratitude. The seva has been given to them to keep them on track and to keep them out of mischief in the world, to advance themselves spiritually in attitude. Now, this could be carried out anywhere. There's no significance, Haynes Park. Even Babaji himself has said, Haynes Park, by the way, for those who don't know, is the spiritual Radha-swami centre of the UK, for people from around the world listening to this. And it's the biggest centre, so everybody goes there, because when Babaji comes to the UK, he goes to Haynes Park, and that is his residence there when he's in the UK. So doing seva at Haynes Park is considered to be the highest seva among the satsangis, not by the Lord, I have to stress, but among the satsangis. But Babaji, interestingly, himself has said, when people complain about what is going on, like in any community, people bicker and they complain, he says, this has been created for you people. I don't need this. I don't need these centres. I don't need all of this. You manage it and you run it according to how you wish, but try to follow the guidelines that I've set for you. Otherwise, this is your own affair, how you wish to conduct yourselves and run it. So some satsangis decide, well, if they're going to do seva, if they do it closest to Babaji, it must be more meaningful. Actually, it isn't. It is the attitude of the sevadar that matters, not where they're doing it. They could be somebody, imagine somebody's been initiated in Outer Mongolia with no access to a spiritual centre. They serve their local community with love and devotion to the Lord. Is the Lord going to reject them because they haven't gone to Haynes Park or to Dera Bias in India? Really? Is that seva going to be rejected? No. Seva done selflessly in the name of the Lord with thanks and gratitude in recognition of what the Lord has done for them, that is seva, wherever it may be.
Have you got any idea why they may think it?
Egos.
Okay.
Like everything else, when people are not spiritually advanced, they're not realized, they automatically engage the mind. And it's the nature of the mind to promote itself, to make itself importance, because the mind otherwise becomes nothing. That's why people want to become celebrities. You know, we have social media, everybody looks at the celebrity, everybody looks at influencers, and what is it all about? Get to be a better version of yourself, be the hero, be the rich one, be that. Why is there so much attraction to this nonsense? Why isn't somebody happy ploughing the field and just being a farmer? Why does he want to be an actor or a celebrity or a singer? Because the nature of the mind is ego, home, I. And it wants to exercise this I to its fullest potential. Now, even in spirituality, when somebody is not practicing well, for those individuals, they use the ego, again, to give them some status. Look, you know, I'm a satsangi, I'm here at Haynes Park doing seva, it's a big thing. And they create these things in their mind. Babaji never says this. The Master himself never says this. This is just creations of them to make themselves feel better. Good luck to them.
Thank you. Okay, I've got a question about, well, a couple of questions about souls. Are walk-ins actually real? My understanding is that souls from the astral level can occupy your body in some circumstances to either help or harm you? Please explain.
You know, Westerners are amazing with their spiritual concepts. They take original ideas and they elaborate it, give it fancy terms, and create this whole elaborate story about it. Because in the absence of real, why not create an illusion? So, but yes, on a serious note, it is possible for an individual here who has a connection with the astral realm to have a possession, be possessed, where an entity can encounter them or come into them and become symbiotic with them, part of them. And they have this dual relationship, dual personality. It does happen. It's not common. It's only in certain individuals who have a strong connection with the astral realm and they're born here to fulfill their purpose, but they still have this connection. So yes, they can have entities come into them, some of which may be bad, some of which may be good. So it's possible, but it's not common. And nobody should be seeking this who's on the spiritual path. They should get past all of these ideas and not concern themselves with such things.
Okay, thank you. Aristotle talked of the 3 types of souls: the nutritive, the sensitive, the locomotive, and the irrational. I know I said 4 things there.
Yeah, there's actually 4.
These correspond to plants, animals, and humans. Is this true, or could you explain what he meant?
You see, Aristotle was a philosopher. So from a philosophical point of view, trying to explain spirituality in philosophy is a little different. Because philosophy is all about the tangible. It's all about what we can sense through the senses. So Aristotle took a spiritual concept and translated it into physical. So plants were nutritive and so on. So there's different things that he attributed. It's just a philosophy. Don't bother with the fact that he used the word soul. He uses the word soul very loosely. That's like saying a drawing of a human being on a canvas is a human being. It's a very loose connection. It's not an actual human being.
Okay, the last question regarding souls. Does each sentient being have the same soul?
Depends in which way you're looking at this. Because there's only one soul, the super soul, ultimately. So yes, but when you look at it from the soul's perspective, when it's separated from its source, then there are countless different souls because they have different viewpoints. Each soul has been created with a slightly different viewpoint to see creation from. Otherwise, why have more than one soul? Why create multiple souls in the first place? Why divide yourself up into countless numbers? If you don't want to see your own glory from infinite angles. So each soul has an individual viewpoint that you can see creation from and an individual experience, part of the fun. But ultimately, they're one. The one soul, the super soul from which you emerge, and you become the various souls of creation. The ocean divides itself up into drops.
Thank you. Right, I've got a question around temptation. How does a person overcome the temptations of the physical world, like lust, that presents itself time after time? We don't want to indulge in such practices, but the mind runs after these pleasures, and they go on to say they're not initiated yet.
You see, the art of spiritual practice is to raise your level of consciousness beyond these things. Now, there's 2 factors at play here. One is karma. Because karma means you have to interact with an individual in a certain way. That is not in your hands. That must be fulfilled in this lifetime. Humans put a perspective on things, a human perspective, which means that this is right and this is wrong. From the Lord's point of view, there's no such thing as right and wrong. There's just doings. There's just karmic fulfillment. And karmic fulfillment has no rhyme or reason as such. It is just a fulfillment of what has gone on before and completed. And if one is able to detach themselves from the karma of their character, from the doings of the character, and seek spirituality, what happens in the end is that as their consciousness raises, they automatically give up these things. They can't force themselves. You can't say, that's it, I'm a spiritual practitioner now, I'm going to stop this. No. It doesn't work like that. Because the tendency and nature of the mind is to run after worldly pleasures and to perform its habitual tendencies. The only way that can be changed is to raise above the level of the mind. So they shouldn't concern themselves with these things. The books are full of exposition of this. You shouldn't be this, you shouldn't be that, you shouldn't do this. Yeah, it's easy to say that. But unless you have attained a certain level of spiritual merit, it's just not possible. The most important thing is your attitude. Even when you're committing a so-called crime of lust or whatever you think it is, if you are always in remembrance of the Lord, if you're always a truth seeker, and you try not to do any harm to anyone or to yourself in whatever you do in this life, there's no sin. So it is automatically forgiven you. But if you engage with it in a selfish motive that you're going to try and you want to either harm this individual or you're doing it for some self-gratification at the expense of another, it's not consensual, or you're expressing yourself in a way that is selfish, purely selfish, and no involvement of any higher thing, then yes, there is a karmic consequence. You have to pay the karmic price. So everything boils down to your attitude. Whatever you do it in the name of the Lord, and do it with a level of understanding that this is what's being presented before me. You can either reject it or enjoy it. Now, sometimes it might be that something comes in front of you and you walk away because the pull wasn't strong enough to make you engage. But other times there's a strong pull and you have to complete that journey. Otherwise, you have to come back in that life again to fulfill that. Certain things must be fulfilled in this life. Other things can be walked away from.
Thank you. Right, I've got a question around the law of attraction. What role does the law of attraction play in our life? If our DVD or script of life is already fixed, then is this law of attraction even relevant? For instance, in trying to find the right partner, people say you will attract the right person by your thoughts, etc. But isn't that already predestined anyway?
They've answered their own question. Everything is predestined. However, again, we're here to have fun. Just because a script is written doesn't mean you can't have fun with it. For example, when an actor goes onto the stage to play his part, he knows the beginning, middle and end of the story. He knows what's going to happen to him 3 scenes ahead. But he still plays his part well. He enjoys playing the part as a participant. Yeah? Our role here is to participate in the story as best we can, hopefully wisely, but in whatever manner, and to play along with the play, to take part in this play as happily as possible, because there's no reality to anything that's going on here. So, yes, everything is scripted, right? But, the mind itself is also scripted to think in a certain way. So the mind might start wishing for something, call it cosmic ordering, they say, law of attraction. Says, I really wish that this would happen. Okay, so you've wished for that. Now what? Yeah, it may or may not happen. Because if it's not in your script, it's not going to happen. If it's in your script, you're going to get it. And you say, wow, that really worked. Thank you. If it doesn't work, say, this law of attraction doesn't work. Because I'm wishing for a red Ferrari in the morning and it didn't come. Yeah, so it's for people who have a certain measure of their little wishes fulfilled because it's written for them. They think, wow, this really works. For the vast majority, they say no. But then because they're so convinced the way the books are written, this law, they think maybe they've done something wrong. So they try harder next time. They do more wishing, like they have a jar of wishes and they put the paper in there. And there's many versions in which people write what they want and do it. And maybe 1 in 1,000 will come true. And they say, yes, it works. Yeah. Actually, but they don't realize it should work every time, if it's true.
Thank you. Right, I've got a few questions around masters, saints, prophets. The first one's quite long, so I'm going to read it all. Right. In the Sant mat, oh, by the way as well, I'm going to pronounce some things that I may get wrong, so I'm going to apologise. First.
Right.
In the Sant mat holy book, titled Bakhan, it says this: below Trikuti, there is the sphere of Sahasdal Kanwal. The prophets of the first order, like Jesus Christ and Prophet Muhammad, and the yogis of the first order, like Gautama and Guranath, became manifest, descended from this sphere, and they reverted to this very sphere and became absorbed upon mortal death. Meanwhile, the Christians call Jesus the Son of God. I regard this as correct. Is it right to say that Jesus is the Son of the Lord, who is called the Lord of the three worlds, meaning trilogy? There's a little bit more.
Okay.
We go back to that bit as well. I have always believed that Jesus was from the Supreme Father and Muhammad was a messenger from Allah, the one true God, and that Gautama, who is Buddha, was a teacher from the Supreme Lord. Kindly explain the meaning of the passages just mentioned and whether my assessment is correct.
Goodness.
So the first bit, is it right to say that Jesus is the Son of the Lord, who is called the Lord of the three worlds, meaning trilogy? That was the first bit.
Yeah, before that, going back into explaining about Trikuti and trilogy, for those who don't know, these are Sant terms and also Sikh terms, explaining about the structure of creation. So trilogy means the three worlds of illusion. So it's a Sanskrit term to mean the three worlds. Tri means three, loki means realms. So the three worlds, which is the causal, the astral, and the physical, which are illusory. So that's what this passage is referring to. And the book, the Sant book, Sarbhajan, was composed by Swamiji Maharaj as an exposition of Sant for the modern age. Well, for that age, in the mid 18th century, mid 19th century. Sorry, because it's 1860s. And that was an explanation. So he wrote an explanation of creation and so on. So that's where these passage comes from. That's where these terms come from. So just to put that into context for people who don't know. And so when Jesus referring to himself as the Son of God, he actually also said that all are sons and daughters of the Lord in the same passage. So he's not saying it in a literal sense. He's also said he's the Son of Man. He's saying this in a metaphorical term. Now the Bible is full of metaphorical explanations, where parables and metaphors are used to explain difficult concepts to very primitive tribal people of the time. So they could easily relate to things like that. Now, what is missing from the Bible is a lot of things that Jesus said in his mission. In fact, the vast majority of what he said is not included in the Bible. He spoke every day of his life, and most of that is not recorded. There are missing gospels as well, like the Gospel of St. Thomas, which gives far more detail about what Jesus actually said. Then there's a Gospel of Mary Magdalene, who was actually his wife, which he had a child with, who unfortunately died at the age of 10. And there's even the Gospel of Judas, the one who so-called betrayed him. You know, Judas was marked as the villain in the Bible, but actually he was a very close friend of Jesus and aided Jesus escape from Palestine, that region, so that he could continue his mission in the east. So Judas was instrumental, and the Bible gives a clue to that by saying where Jesus says to Judas, "Go and do what must be done." He actually instructs Judas to betray him. So Judas was a very high-level disciple of Jesus and followed his master's instructions implicitly, knowing full well that he was going to be crucified. That's some devotion, where your master goes and tell the hangman to come and get me. He was the only one who could do it. The other disciples didn't have the nerve. So Judas has been painted in a bad light. Mary Magdalene, meanwhile, has been painted as a prostitute because they couldn't accept that a female was number one disciple in the spiritual path of Jesus Christ, because she was the one who actually saw him after he departed the body. He appeared to her as the Holy Spirit and told her to go and tell the disciples that I have risen. I am not in the body anymore. It's not that he physically had risen, spiritually he had risen out of the body, and that he's with them. She was the one. And the disciples said, why her? Why was she so special? Because she was his wife. She was the closest one to him and the most advanced disciple. So actually, of all the disciples, Mary Magdalene was the most advanced. But Christianity has written her out of history and even put her as a prostitute that he saved. You know, how unjust is that? But that's what religion does. Religion later on, when the philosophers, the scholars, and the certain societies take it over, they rewrite the script, or they modify the script to suit their own particular society beliefs. So a lot of what Jesus said was missing. So when he talks about being the Son of the Lord, he also says, I am the bride and the Lord is my Father. He speaks of himself as the bride. All these relationships he's speaking about are relationships between the divine. They're not literal. The trouble is that later scholars decided to make Christianity separate. This is all because of King Constantine, the Holy Roman Empire, who adopted Christianity as part of the Roman Empire, wanted to make it different from other religions at the time. So Jesus now had to play the central role of not just being a master, directing souls, initiating them and making them disciples and teaching them the way home, dying while living, which is the meditation concept taught in Sant today. But he now had to be the living son of a God. God had one son. How the hell we all got created is a real mystery to Christianity. Because if God didn't create us, then, you know, we must be all sons then. Because according to here, if a mother creates 10 children, she doesn't say that this is my son and all the others are others. How does she explain that? So Christianity struggles with a lot of nonsense in its belief system. But there's clues in the Bible where Jesus says that ye are all sons and daughters of the Lord. Why fret? Yeah? And he even says later on, all ye gods. He called not only now were they sons and daughters, they're all potential God. So he refers to stages. And even he starts off saying, I am the son of the Father. Then he says, I am one with the Father. As he progressed in his mission, the statements became more and more about oneness. So his message was very similar to what is taught in Sant today. But when religious scholars take hold of it and want to twist it here and there, they write it in a certain way that gives a different meaning. And that's what is a misunderstanding that Jesus is the Son of God. And he's not. He is a son. An enlightened one, but we're all sons and daughters of the Lord, as Jesus himself said. So that answers that part. Regarding the others, Prophet Muhammad was a messenger from Allah, which was the Lord of the first realm. And so on. Gautama, Buddha, again, was from the second, the causal realm. So he was the wise one. So each of these people descended from a particular level of spirituality, but not the very highest. You know, when we talk about the highest spiritual truth, we talk about the saints, the perfect saints. And they come from a level beyond the mind, beyond the illusion. Whereas these other holy visitors that came to the earth, the religions of the book, as they call them, which is Judaism, Christianity, Islam, these Abrahamic faiths focused on the state of humanity in the physical level. So how could we improve a lot of people here, and then there's a reward for them karmically in heaven. So it was all about creating good karma, good deeds that leads to a good place afterwards, or bad deeds leads to a hell. So Buddhism, so on, and largely Hinduism as well, they all encompass this. But the saints are separate. The saints are not religious. They do not follow any philosophy. They come with the ability to free us from all this nonsense of the one creation and take us back home. And they have no religion associated with them, no philosophy associated with them. So they are the highest form of spiritual enlightenment and salvation that a human being can befall. But meanwhile, there's lesser versions of salvation, which is through the religions. So religions have their part to play in introducing us to spiritual ideas and getting us to be better human beings and getting us to understand, maybe conditioning the mind, so that life after life will become more and more evolved, eventually be born to the point where we want the highest truth, we become a seeker, and therefore we seek a saint and a perfect one. And the religions don't attract us anymore. They're full of ceremony and nonsense and competitions, and it just doesn't make sense to a lot of people who are looking at the religious practitioners, say this is just crazy. You know, they no longer subscribe to that. because they've done all their homework in the past.
Thank you. How can we remember the Holy Master in our daily chores that we do? Do you have any tips that work for you?
Unfortunate for me, I'm totally smitten by the Master, so I have no choice but to remember him. You see, it's all a matter of our objective in life. If our objective is spiritual and to know the truth of spirituality, then everything we do in life works towards that objective. Let's say we're going to study and we go to university to pass an exam. Then all our life is geared towards that objective. We have to pass that exam no matter what. Whatever else you're doing in life, the object is to pass that assignment, to pass that exam. That is because that's our objective, and therefore we have a focus of attention, a place to focus. So if spirituality, Sant, becomes the focus of our intention, naturally becomes our objective, and naturally we do all the things necessary to obtain that objective. So it's a matter of making it as important as possible in our life. Once it becomes the most important thing, the rest will follow.
Thank you. Is there any benefit in visiting places where perfect saints have been? Do these places carry any blessing, power, or nothing at all? A lot of people, especially in the Sikh faith, like to visit all the temples and villages where some of the gurus came from.
Everything is perspective. You see, I'm not saying that there is nothing there, because everything carries a spiritual attribute. Anything, even a leaf on a tree. The difference is who is going there. With what mindset are they going there? So they go on a pilgrimage to visit a holy place. And that place reminds them of the spirituality. It encourages them to follow spirituality. It allows them to spend time in that spiritual awareness. It gives them more confidence, more kind of focus for spirituality. Then yeah, it's a very good thing to do. And originally, when people went to see the shrine of a past saint or whatever, if there was one erected or something, or the home in which they're brought up, it's because they had a connection with that individual. They felt a pull, they felt a connection. So that is just a reminder. Just like now we have photos of the Master or things like that. As a reminder, it's not a replacement, it's a reminder. So from that point of view, no harm. But if you only do this and you never inquire within, it doesn't lead you to go within yourself to find the truth for yourself, to connect your soul with the super soul, then what is the use of it? This is just adventuring in creation, because actually everything is the Lord. So when you're selecting a particular part of it, and it's not really taking you within, then really it's just not really of any use.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions around the yugas. Why are yugas broken down into different ages? For instance, the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, and the Golden Age. Could you give a brief explanation of each one?
Okay. You see, the yugas are just a description of eras, that the cycles that the world goes through. So in ancient Hindu times, they just used the word yuga, which is a Sanskrit term, to describe great periods where there was a noticeable difference in, say, spiritual energy and evolution. And according to the philosophy, the world is constantly going around in cycles. I mean, science has identified cycles. It doesn't call them yugas, but it calls them periodicity, or cycles of time, where we go through ice ages and non-ice ages, where we go through warming and cooling, and we go through mass extinctions and so on. All of these are cycles. Now, in spirituality, they've identified another type of cycle, which is a spiritual cycle, in which the spiritual energy and vibration increases and decreases, ebbs and flows in the world. So therefore, the humans living at a particular time have more access to spirituality, have more spiritual vibration within them, and therefore they conduct themselves in that manner. So this was by the great past sages and wise ones, the yogis. They divided this into 4 yugas. So we have the Satyuga or Golden Age, then we have Treta Yuga, the Silver Age, then we have the Dwapar Yuga, the Bronze Age, and then the Kal Yuga, the Iron Age. And these are just descriptive terms to describe the level of spiritual awareness that people existing during those eras undergo. So we are currently now in Dwapar Yuga. So we've left the Iron Age, the Dark Age or the Iron Age, and we're now heading towards a spiritual enlightenment. We're working way up because there's ascending and descending. So we're now ascending to eventually the Golden Age in several thousand years' time. So in this current age, Dwapar Yuga, you'll notice more conscious awareness of, say, the environment, spirituality, harm. There's less wars despite what's going on in Russia. In fact, the interesting thing is that when the Russian war broke out, people were so stunned. How can we have a war in the 21st century? I thought we'd done with all that barbarism. So people, where are they getting this idea from? Historically, most of the time they've been warring with each other and reveling in it. Why suddenly now the consciousness has changed? That's really interesting. And we notice we're getting more with equality, and there's more, society is much better than it was 2,000 years ago when the Romans were around. Yeah, it was a brutal existence then. We've evolved clearly. So this is in line with the ebb and flow of creation, of the physical realm. And we turn these yugas. So we're in now the spiritual, where we're starting now to look at spirituality. So there's more spiritual groups going on. There'll be more people following spirituality, moving away from religion slightly, and there'll be more things concentrating on not harming the creation, not harming oneself, like becoming vegan, like becoming humanitarian, like saving the planet, recycling, environmentally conscious. All these things did not exist 2,000 years ago. So we've entered a state now where we've become much higher, more highly evolved, you could say, more higher consciousness. And why should that be the case? Because for the vast majority, if you look at it from a science point of view, let's say the humans walked out of Africa 100,000 years ago, for at least the last 98,000 years or 90,000 years, we've been barbaric. So many thousands of years. Yet very recently, we've just suddenly become advanced. No explanation. How is it that, the Neanderthals lived for 800,000 years? They did not advance much in 800,000 years. Modern humans come on board and suddenly there's an acceleration. No explanation. There's a lot of things that can't be explained by mainstream science, so they leave it alone. They talk about periodicity, they talk about climate, but they don't understand about even the cultures, civilizations come and gone. In fact, there's great evidence of great massive megalith structures who is purported to have been put up by our Stone Age ancestors, but they just didn't have the tools or the technology to do that. The civilizations who built those megalithic structures had to be much more advanced than we are crediting our Stone Age ancestors who didn't do it, they just inherited it. So it's interesting when you look at evidence, even objects found embedded in solid rock, going back 2 million years, advanced technology, no explanation. How did it get into rock 2 million years old? These are classed as anomalies in science, and anomalies are just put to one side and ignored because it's going to give us a headache to explain it, but it's there nevertheless. So this is showing evidence that civilizations are come and gone, and the world with plate tectonic can turn upside down a whole land. Like most of the civilizations of the recent past is underwater, because most civilizations in past times, advanced ones, created along the coastal regions. And since the Younger Dryas, the melting of the ice in the north and so on, the sea levels have risen by 300 meters. Therefore, all these coastal massive palaces and everything are all underwater. Famous one is Dwarka in India, where the place of Krishna, they finally located Dwarka, his palace, and it is underwater. It is in the location they predict it should be, but it's wholly underwater. And similarly, the bridge that links Sri Lanka to India, which with Rama is supposed to have crossed and built across the causeway going across the link, is underwater, but it exists. So there's clearly civilizations in the past that were more advanced than we have given credit for. They've been totally lost through the workings of the churning of the oceans and of the plate tectonics, volcanoes and everything, destroying everything. And then now we're building it up again. Guaranteed in a million years' time, none of this will exist that you see now. There will be not a single trace that our modern civilization existed, except for something that might be embedded in the rock in the future. Because the world is constantly shifting and changing. Where there's a cataclysmic disaster of a meteor striking, blowing everything up, and then world reshaping, many, many encounters can annihilate everything we have built. So this is the explanation of the yugas from a spiritual perspective, that the world has gone through eras, and we're currently now in Dwapara Yuga, and it will carry on going on until we reach Satgurus, and then it'll go down again, it'll descend downwards, back to Kali Yuga, and then recycle over again. The whole cycle lasts 26,920 years.
I think you just answered the next question. I don't know if you want to add to it. What yuga are we in right now? You said
it's the Dwapara Yuga, yeah.
And what does it mean for humankind? What will we see happening?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's more spiritual elevation. People are moving towards more humanitarian, spiritual, kindness, society, more equality. All the things that we are kind of likening to, that the things that we admire in society and we'd wish for, is starting to come about. But it's coming about quite naturally. It's not a particular group driving it. It seems that the whole society everywhere is moving that way by a force unknown. Yeah, they don't know what the driving force is for that. That's the future scientists, spiritual scientists will discover, and will give it a name. Probably not call it the yugas, they might call it something else. But they'll say that definitely the Earth itself undergoes cycles of energy, where there's an increased energy and so on, even when they drill into the core. At the moment now, when they're drilling into the Antarctic core and other things, they're just measuring elemental stuff. They're not really looking at alignment of molecules to indicate the spiritual bias of magnetism and electrical. They haven't got there yet. They will eventually see that, and they'll see there's been patterns of alignment. And what does it actually mean when molecules are more sophisticatedly aligned than before, when they're more randomly packed? So what does this mean? That there's a more kind of order. And that's what yugas are heading towards, more order, more structure, more positivity.
It's interesting.
Yeah, science will back it up.
Right, I've got a few questions around love. First one, please can you explain the Persian terms? Ishq hakiki, I think I've said that right, it means real love, and ishq majazi, which is metaphorical love.
Yeah, I mean, these two terms are Persian terms that come from the Sufi tradition. So the haq, which is the truth, means the ultimate truth in Persian, which is the equivalent of, say, Satgurus in Sikhism. So ishq is the Lord, or the divinity. So ishq hakiki means the real devotion, the real truth. They've translated as the real love, but it's the real truth, right? Which means that attainment that the Sufis were heading towards, the ultimate goal, which we call Satgurus, and so on. And the ishq majazi is metaphorical love, meaning it's the expression of this in the current age. So the expression of truth in the current age means that we practice belief systems, we follow religious ideals, we follow all these things are measures of the expression of that divinity or love, or whatever you want to call it. And they're practiced in a human perspective. So they're at odds with each other. They're opposites. Yeah, you start off with the metaphorical expression, the falseness, the false or fake expression of truth, in illusion, and then you become eventually to the state where you become fully realized and you see the actual truth for what it is. So that's what this is referring to.
Thank you. Next question about love. How can I learn to love myself, as I am often so self-critical?
The answer is simple. Don't love your character, love your soul. Your true self is infinite, divine, and perfect. What is there not to love about something that's infinite, divine, and perfect? So why not focus your love on that and let the character just be? We're so focused on, because of the ego, on perfecting our character. We have to be like this. We have to look a certain way. We have to act a certain way. We have to speak in a certain way. We have to attain certain things. And you might not love that. The mind might not like that. Yeah. But if the mind instead switches its attention to your real self, the hero within you. Yeah. Mariah Carey sang a famous horror, there's a hero within you. Yeah. Very true. It could be a spiritual song. And if you focus on the hero within you, then suddenly your perspective changes. You're no longer this trampled on beggar. Now you're something of consequence. And that is something to love. So when you love that part of you, you'll start making it the objective to realize that part of you. That realization then makes it spiritual. So that's how you can turn this into a spiritual idea. Yeah, turning the simple idea of loving yourself, right? Seek the truth and find yourself fully realized, and then you realize you're the hero all along, pretending to be this miserable beggar.
Okay. Right, the last question about love. Well, I put it under this because I think it might relate to it.
Okay.
How can we become more tolerant of our family members? As the saying goes, you can choose your friends, but not your family.
Well, that's true, because the family is scripted, but actually both are. You don't, from a human perspective, yes, but from the Lord's perspective, you don't choose your friends either. You know, this is all scripted. I think being tolerant of anyone, family or not, is a noble human trait anyway. The only reason we become intolerant is because we're unwise. Firstly, if we realize, ultimately, I'm going to talk at a very high level now, everybody's your other self, your alter ego, your alter self. Why would you ever then complain about them? They are just doing what they're meant to do, they're programmed to do, to test you, yeah? To see how much is your resolve. You claim to be a noble human being. Okay, now I'm going to put you to the company of this individual who's going to test your nobility. And if you're so easily flustered, what is your nobility? So when you attach yourself to characters and you get obsessed by characters, that's when there's a problem. Because quite clearly all the characters in the play are doing different things. Somebody has to be a villain, somebody has to be a saint, somebody has to be somebody else. Right? And when you start labeling and deciding and judging, then you're in a whole heap of trouble. But if you see everybody as a soul of the Lord playing out their part, and that they are scripted to play their part, why should you take it seriously? Everything passes away. When you stand in front of the mirror, you'll even say, this too shall pass away. What is the consequence of it all? You know, we need to put in perspective about how long we are here. What is the role of a human being here? And along the way, we want to make this as pleasant and as peaceful as possible. Why get into bickering and fightings and all this? Why not just be nice, kind?
But is it okay if you just ignore them?
Yes, you can.
Or very little
if you're not in a position where you can be the wise advisor to them, then yes, ignore them. Until you reach a point, you develop yourself. When you get to a higher point, then nobody will bicker with you. They won't dare. They'll feel guilty even. You know, because they'll think, wow, you know, this is such a noble wife or husband or person in my life. How can I dare offend them in any way? Naturally, it has a controlling. So this is why advancing yourself is the key to solving all your problems. Because then automatically the world will conform around you.
Thank you. I've got a question about God's will. Does anything happen in this world that is not God's will? I have heard that occult practices such as black magic and witchcraft are not God's will.
I think that's a Christian perspective, you know. Well, if the Lord is the creator, as I've said, of everything, including you and everyone else, and all the scenery and all the creation, what else is there but God's will? Now, science and higher level science have come to this conclusion as well, that there's no such thing as free will. Because according to science, when the Big Bang occurred, all the forces of nature and all the particles with all their properties were created at once. The universal law of the universe that governs the forces was created, which is why we have mathematics and science, why it works. Because if there's no order in the universe, you could not make a rocket go to the moon. You cannot predict its orbit. You cannot predict how a molecule is going to behave when you make a simple pen. It will not hold its structure together, it will just disintegrate. Because things follow the law. Now, even the atoms and molecules are following the law of nature, and they have no free will about that. We are made up of the dust, or stardust, as Carl Sagan said. We are made up of stardust here. What can we do other than follow the law? How can free will even exist from a scientific point of view? So that's why top scientists, geneticists, mathematicians, they all agree that there's no such thing as free will, and now they're looking at this, saying that the universe is an illusion. The whole life is an illusion. They're actually seriously looking at this. Is anything real in the universe? And there's debates going on in science now, since the discovery of quantum mechanics, that things can appear or disappear from other dimension into this dimension and disappear back again. Since it's been discovered, now they're thinking, is there anything that's real here? Because it just seems to come from nothing and become something and then disappear back, you know? And then also about perspective. What is consciousness? Is everything that we're seeing dependent on how we perceive things to be, right? So if our perception is a certain way, we'll see things in a certain way. For example, two people looking at a beautiful painting. One will say that's beautiful, the other will say they're ugly. The painting is the same. Which one is right? Where's the reality? So reality is relative to the individual. So Einstein a little bit discovered that. So science interestingly backs spirituality on this point. But human beings, egotistical human beings, don't like that idea. No. I am accountable for what I've done, and that one is accountable for what he's done, and this must be the clash, this must be the way it works. So there's no other way to live this life other than to compete, fight, war, and everything else. No, there isn't. Just go with the flow, enjoy. Just chill like the animals do. Yeah, like children do, in fact. Children are wonderful examples of innocence and wonder. Because despite what's going on in the world, they just go and play. And somehow they still get fed, clothed, and looked after. Yeah, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? So wouldn't the Lord do that with you? If you did the same thing. So if you play with the Lord, have Lord in your life and play along, the Lord will take care of your needs just as well.
Thank you. Right, I've got a last question now. So if anyone's got any questions, you can get them prepared. It's about negative spirits. Is it true that negative spirits from the astral realm attach themselves to those who have drunk alcohol or taken other mind-altering drugs, causing problems for the drug user? If so, do these spirits often affect those people who are around them, such as family?
It's an interesting question, and it's absolutely true in a sense. You know, the whole concept of drugs and mind-altering substances is quite interesting, because what is the purpose of mind-altering substances in this creation? You know, why do they exist, and what role do they have? The interesting thing is this: that in the astral realm, which is the realm of imagination and ideas, all these things happen naturally. They don't need drugs to do it. So when somebody descends from the astral realm here, they've spent some time there, and they have an association with spirits in the astral realm. When they come here, the spirits also demand that they have some taste of excitement of being in the physical without actually coming to the physical. They want to be with their companion. So what happens? This person becomes an addict. They don't just drink, they drink to intoxication. And that intoxication allows a connection between them via their subconscious to the spirit world. And then these people feed on their drunkenness. They feed on that ecstasy of that wonder, because that is how it works there. So yes, for some people there's this connection. So it's absolute truth. In spirituality, the saints explain to us that these people are possessed. This is why people can't give it up. If you ask them, what is this addiction habit? Why would you be addicted to anything? Especially something that harms you. Why would you want to do that? Unless you are out of control. Yeah? Why should the brain or nature, which is self-preservation, right, is designed to preserve you under all costs, destroy you? Human beings are the only ones who have this experience. No animal has this state. No animal undergoes this type of intoxication and drunkenness or drug addiction. Only human beings. This is very interesting. Yeah, because only human beings have that ability to connect in higher consciousness level. So those ones who are connected with the astral realm and they have affinity with the beings there because they've come from there, long story of their past, when they come here, they share their life with the astral beings, so they become deranged. They become delusional. They become outrageous. And that's because that's exactly what happens in the lower part of the astral realm there. So the connection between these beings who have affinity means that this one will become drunk here and they will be demonized. That's why, funny enough, the Bible even says that the demon, they call alcohol a demon. It's very interesting. Even going back 2,000 years, they recognized that drug addiction was demonic. They said it in that way. They didn't say it was something else. They didn't say mental illness. They used the demonic. And it's interesting because going back even further into the ancient Vedic scriptures, they also talk about demonic forces inhabiting people who partake in certain substances. Yeah. So historically, all the way along, there's been a similar connotation used. And that's because it actually is true. It's perhaps not in the sense that they would like it to be, but it's a very personal thing. That's why people find it so difficult to give up their demons. As they say, give up your demons, get rid of your demons. Yeah? Because you do have an intimate connection with the higher realms. Humans are not isolated. You're not born here totally cut off from your higher self. Otherwise you could not exist. There's a chain of creation, a chain of consciousness that links you to every level. And if that's a positive connection, you have a positive experience. If it's a negative connection, you have a negative experience. These are all the intricacies of life, of creation. It has to be as intricate as possible because the God is infinite. So the creation has to be infinitely intricate. But amongst all of this, there's salvation. When the time comes for you, you meet a perfect living saint, become initiated, go home. So there's a way out for everybody, even the fool and the drunk, in time. But it may be that they have to exhaust that karma with that individual. Once that part has been played, they never visit again. They never come together again. That includes the people that you love so much here. The people you think, I love you so much, I'll meet you again in life after life. You won't. Because once your karma is finished, you have no association with them. Because there was never any reality to that association in the first place. It was all based upon pure karma, that these individuals come together to bring these people into the world to do this role. And then when the night comes, the birds fly away from the tree and go a separate way. As Guru Nanak says, that he said the birds come to roost at night on the same tree from all different places. And when the morning comes, they leave and fly their separate ways, never to meet again. And that's exactly how it is with us. But because we don't know this, we play the part of, this is my first friend, this is my enemy, this is my this is my that. And we go through all of this possessiveness because we don't have anything else. When we don't have the real thing in the hand, when we don't have diamonds in the hand, we consider our glass beads to be diamonds. And we say, wow, these are so precious. But when somebody gives us real diamonds, you throw away the beads automatically. So detachment cannot be done without attachment. The only way to detach from all the nonsense is to attach yourself to something higher, which is what spirituality is about. Then automatically discard everything. I often give the example that a boy playing with his toy car, he plays and plays, and you try to take it away from him, he'd cry the house down. He'd stomp his feet and plead and beg. When he hits 18 years old, and you give him the keys to a new car, he himself discards the toy. This is how it works with us. We have to have something. The nature of the mind is mine. I need things. I need possessions. This one belongs to me. Because the mind cannot exist on its own. It's part of a collective. So it attaches itself to things by default. But when it attaches to something higher, like a spiritual mind attaches itself to spirituality, let's say, then wow, you automatically give up all these lower things. You say, why? It's just boring. It's not that somebody needs to convince you. You just think, oh, I don't feel like it anymore, you know? And then when you reach the level of the soul, you even give up the mind. Then you look at your character and thinking, what is this all about? This nonsense, this imposter called me is not me. It's not true me. It's an imposter playing the part. So you even give up your own body and your own self, the character that you're playing, even there. So at all stages, it's getting to higher truth. You're giving up the lower truth.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions?
No, we're all happy. We're all enlightened. I like to hear. Good. So we'll now have a break for lunch. And thank you for visiting.
So dehi paje har ki sev pajo gobind pul mat ja मानस जानम का एही ला